Hello, everyone. Welcome to Horror 101 with Dr. AC. My name is Aaron Christensen, and this is Scare-A-Thon 2023, benefiting the Women's Reproductive Rights Assistance Project. And today we're going to be talking about Becky from 2020, and I've assembled an awesome group of folks to come in and chat about Becky. Let's talk to Vanessa Morgan,
Hello.
Larry Sternshein, and Mark Easteadt. And again, we're talking about Becky from 2020. So I'm curious because I didn't realize this until I got this on Blu-ray. But I didn't realize this was the #1 film in America at one point because it came out in 2020 during the pandemic and nothing was playing in theaters. And apparently it hit the drive-in circuit and made quite a big noise there. But I talking off camera, I know that nobody saw it at the drive-in. So I'm curious, Larry, why don't we start with you? What was where did you see it for the first time?
Okay, so I will admit to saying that I actually just watched it the first time yesterday.
Awesome.
I knew I was going to like this movie. I just never had a excuse or time to watch it. And I was like, this is perfect. I'm going to watch it. I'm going to watch the sequel. And we're going to have the best time. And I actually really did. See, so we lucked out on this one because if I hated it, I would have been a liar. But that's why I watched it back to back with that and the sequel. And awesome. It's a very interesting experience. So if we do talk about the sequel, I'll talk a little bit more about that. But I was really engaged by Becky. It was a little bit better than I anticipated too, which was nice. And I think a lot of that had to do with Lulu Wilson's performance. So
for sure,
that's how I first saw it.
Mark.
I didn't see it in the theaters or at the drive-in either. I don't know exactly when I saw it. Probably last fall. I watched it for the first time streaming, and then I rewatched it a few days ago and watched Wrath of Becky as well. So it was. I'm probably going to be the one who's a little bit more of the naysayer on both movies. There were definitely things I liked, but there were definitely things that I didn't. So I'll wait and bring those up later.
And Vanessa.
I discovered it a couple of years ago and watched it on my little computer screen because I was preparing my horror movie reference guide on evil children, evil seeds. And so I was really looking for movies around that theme with killer kids. And then, of course, I found Becky and I was pleasantly surprised. Yeah. And then in April of this year, I saw the Wrath of Becky at the BIF Film Festival here in Brussels. And I also hosted a panel discussion with both directors. They're really awesome as well. And I'm rather a fan of both films, even if usually I'm more like, I love serious horror most of the time, but still, I really enjoyed both films.
It is interesting that both the original Becky from 2020 and the sequel, which came out this year, Wrath of Becky, both are directed by directing teams. You know, that it's two directors, but they're not the same two directors for the sequel and the original. But it does. I agree. I really like it. I think it has a lot. It's better than you think it's going to be. Like I hear it was kind of pitched as kind of, Home Alone with a horror twist. And I don't think it's that so much, but it is that thing of them underestimating the kid, which is something when I was a kid, I was like going, no, the kids are the smart ones and the adults are the dumb ones. So that totally resonated for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I also thought like you said, like it hardly has a connection with Home Alone. I can see why, because she makes a couple of traps, but I think it's a lot more reminiscent of films, female revenge thrillers.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's what
just
I was thinking.
Like here, the female badass who is killing everyone is just a little girl of 13 years old and not a grown-up woman. But otherwise, it's very, very similar to all the other films.
Yeah, she doesn't make nearly as like elaborate of, like traps. I mean, it's pretty simple. And that's kind of what I like about it. I like how kind of rough and ready it is. I also like the fact that we have two actors who are known for comedy, Joel McHale and Kevin James, who are going, well, Joel McHale's still pretty much a straight guy, but Kevin James is playing very much against type as kind of the heavy villain. and I thought he did a really nice job.
Yeah, absolutely. You can hardly even recognize him. And also in the second film, in the Wrath of Becky, there you have Sean William Scott, who is Stifler from American Pie.
Right.
And he's pretty dark in this film. Yeah.
For sure.
I have to say, when I saw it yesterday, Kevin James was great. I like when comedians kind of go dark, and he has that very physically imposing character. And you know, being Jewish, you never like to see Nazis on screen, but it's always great to see them get their killed in really gruesome ways. The Joel McHale, on the other hand, I feel like he was a little miscast though, because he had to be tortured, and him screaming just felt like that was not his forte. So it kind of took me out of the movie a little bit, with just how he needed to go to scream queen class probably.
He's done other horror though.
Yeah.
He was in I think it's Deliver Us from Evil with Eric Bana. He was kind of a, and I can't remember. I've seen him in an action movie too. So he's at least tried to expand. Can't say it's always super successful. I think it's helped him that his size is bigger. He was playing a soldier in Deliver Us from Evil, but
kind of to your point though, Vanessa, the idea of it being a smaller scale, but still like it's very much a straight ahead revenge flick. And I think, as is the case often with those, is that they underestimate their prey. And she's able to come back. I wasn't aware of Lulu Wilson. This is probably the first thing I've seen her in, but I know she's in the Netflix miniseries of, is it Haunting of Hill House?
Haunting of Hill House. And she's also in Ouija, Origin of Evil.
Okay.
And she's really amazing in everything she does, really. She's so talented. And apparently also, that's what the directors told me, she's doing around 50% of her own stunts.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
For Wrath of Becky?
Yeah.
Or for both of them?
For both of them, apparently, yeah.
Awesome. Well, and also she does the drawings for the opening credits.
Oh, I didn't know
like
that.
When all the different Beckys that pop up on the screen, she did that. She does, like, I guess the directors on the first film saw her like doodling, and they're like, hey, do you want to like do like different versions of your name for the opening credits, which I thought was super cool. And holy mackerel, can we talk about the theme music? Because I love it. Like
Me too.
That driving electronic score, amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't really remember the name of the composer of that. I think it's a woman as well. But yeah, it's really, you feel the tension thanks to that music. Yeah.
And our directors, Jonathan Milott and Cary Murnion, that directed our first film. I haven't seen either of these films yet, but they also did the film Cooties with Elijah Wood, and Bushwick with Dave Bautista. And so I'm kind of like, and I'm always intrigued by directing teams where one person tends to handle kind of the technical stuff, the other one handles the actors. So I'm going to throw up the spoilers banner, and let's talk a little bit more in depth about some of the plot points. I like how simple Becky's kills are. Like I like the fact that she, uses a broken ruler, and she uses like, a bunch of art pencils taped together to murder, her killers. She uses, her dog, things like that. What were people's thoughts on that?
For me, it really makes sense, because it's all about Becky's rage. Even before everything started with the bad guys coming over, she had a lot of problems, a lot of sadness, a lot of rage about her life. And then, spoiler alert, she sees her dad and her dog being killed, and then just she snaps. And each time when she kills someone, you can really just feel the entire rage coming from her. And that's what I think is so brilliant about Lulu Wilson. She's 13 years old. I don't even know where this comes from with her. She's really amazing for this, but you can really feel her rage. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like almost an overcompensating rage. Like, so she kills that first guy, but then she like stomps the ruler through his neck. Like he's already pretty much gone, and she just, like can't control it, just keeps it going. And I think there's a couple of spots like that where like it's just
Yeah.
everything that I'm frustrated about in my life, plus what just happened now is like it's all coming out, and I can't do anything about it. Even at the end, when she's riding that tire on his face, she like erases 2/3 of his head with it. So yeah, and she definitely did a great job, and I think was the best part of the movie. I don't know if it would have worked if they didn't have a really good actress in that role. So
I kind of related in some ways to her, because I remember when I was that age, I had some difficulties at school, kind of like she had in that opening scene. I didn't get like beat up or anything, but there's some joking around, and I'm like 13, so I don't necessarily let things go so much, but I didn't really talk about it. Whereas in this movie, she doesn't talk about it. And
Yeah.
I've had instances where I've broken things because I didn't talk about it and let the anger come out. So I felt like I understood her a little bit. Like I've never gone that, I've never done violence towards a person or anything, but like I get why she would go like stomping on him and stuff, because she's letting out all this sadness and anger come out, and then she's, already lost her mom, and then she's going to lose her dad. She's loss is like a big thing that she doesn't know how to deal with, so it was great.
Oftentimes what we'll have when we have like a group of, bad guys is there's the leader and then there's like his minions. And there's two of them that are kind of run of the mill minions, but then there's the character of Apex, which is this giant of a man played by Robert Milott. And I love the fact that he also has the best kind of character arc. I mean, obviously second to Lulu, he has the best arc because you see him really wrestling with his role. And I was really kind of impressed with what he had to do, because he has loyalty here, but he also has loyalty to his own ethics. And I was really struck by that. I thought it was a great performance.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm a big wrestling fan, so I remember watching him as like just Kurgan, who's his name, was just a big, tall guy in wrestling. And then he got into acting. And I think working with guys like Robert Downey Jr. probably helped him sort of get good at it, because I thought his performance was scary and sad. And I was just really kind of surprised. And just how his whole character ends up, I thought that was pretty clever. Like, he's trying to like save himself, and she's just like, no. I thought that was I like that ending too. He could have just been like left away, and he didn't get a lesser writing team might have let him go because he helped her, but he realized that, I mean, he did bad things. So
yeah, and I think that's it. We are as conflicted as she might be. It's like, yes, he's a bad guy. There's no question about it, but he's been a good guy for a few minutes here. And we're like, okay, has he redeemed himself? And but Becky's the only one who can answer that. And her response is, no, it's not enough. Mark, what were some of your quibbles? I'm just curious.
Well, I do want to say about him, I think the best scene with him, and where you could see that tension in him, I think it was down near the lake, but where like he catches her and he like, she is fighting him and stuff. And so he just like picks her up and slams her down. And then you kind of immediately see on his face and in his body, like, this is not what I want to be doing. Like, I don't want to be doing this to a kid. And, she doesn't care. Like, you just picked me up and slammed me down. But like for him, you got to physically see the conflict rather than him have to say it. And he does say it at other times, but it illustrated it really well. I think my biggest quibble, and it was in both movies because it carried on to the second one, was the key as the MacGuffin. It was trying to be the briefcase in Pulp Fiction, and it wasn't. We should most definitely have found out what the key was for And I think they missed a golden opportunity in the sequel to have the end be us. You know, you didn't do it in the first one, so you got to give it to us in the second, and they didn't.
Maybe we will
So
get it in the third one.
I was
yeah,
gonna say,
but I
feel
don't
like
want to wait the third. It would have so been good if something happened at the end for Becky, whether it was money or it was something else, or you know, we should have found out. It was, for me, it was a MacGuffin that hurt the movie instead of helped it.
I think it's so blatantly a MacGuffin that I was like, okay, like this is purely there to just drive things forward. And for me, I was like, oh, actually, I don't need to know. In fact, there's some ways I'm kind of like, okay, you know what? We will never find out, in the way that she will never find out, of course, not knowing that the sequel lies ahead. There was something kind of interesting about that, in the way that, you know, like when Apex gets killed, it was unexpected, because I think I was expecting them to tell us what this key is for. What was it about? You know, Kevin James clearly has to have his monologue where he talks about what this key is going to do, and he doesn't. And I was like, that's kind of cool, because that's not what we've gotten used to.
I agree with you. We don't really need to know what that key is for. And indeed, it would have been more of like a cliche if we would just have the explanation in the end. Maybe we would have been disappointed too. We never know. But yeah, I don't think we need to know. And it's rather clever that they don't do it the way, everyone
We
else would have
expected.
done it. Yeah.
Right.
I
don't know.
wonder if they had a script sequel of their own in mind that delves into it, because they could have just had they're looking for money, but they have this
Right.
apparently elaborate backstory to this key that's supposed to save humanity and stuff. Like, that was strange. So I kind of wonder if there was a sequel in mind, but something happened where they didn't do it. I don't know. But
Or is it just so that we, the audience, go, I wonder what that key was for, so that it leaves us thinking about it?
It does to me, but I think it's lazy writing. You know, when it's so obviously a MacGuffin,
Yeah.
I think you have to have something for it. Otherwise, to me, it just felt like, well, we needed a reason for them to get here. Let's make it a key. That's
Right.
how it felt to me. You know, so we made it something, but it has no meaning. It was just a way for us. It's just a plot point, you know,
Right.
and I hate when writers do that with characters as well, which happened in the sequel. We need a person to propel. We need someone or something to propel the action. Well, we'll make it this, and then it doesn't have further meaning or context. And that's why I'm, you know, I don't even care if it wasn't revealed fully or anything, as much as, like, I don't know, we need a reason to believe this wasn't just your reason to get Kevin James to this scene.
Yeah.
Sure.
Maybe.
That's what, you know, and it's tough. I'm not saying it's easy. It's like, you know, trying to come up with an idea that resonates more, but yeah.
Yeah, maybe something important to know too about the sequel is that when the directors were hired to direct it, there wasn't a screenplay yet.
Right.
And the producer said, you have only 3 weeks to write a screenplay. So yeah, I think it's kind of brilliant what they did with it in 3 weeks.
Well, let's
Wrath of Becky, you
yeah.
mean?
Yeah, let's jump forward into that one, because I'd say thumbs up to Becky. I thought it was a solid film. It surprised me in a lot of ways, and but the sequel, also, I was kind of like, oh no, I don't know that I like the idea of a sequel. And thankfully, you know, I didn't have really a choice in the matter, because it had already come out by the time I was watching Becky. So I'm like, okay, well, I know there's going to be more, but again, it's very tonally different. There's a lot more kind of like comedy, at least in the opening, say like 15 minutes. Like there's that kind of voiceover stuff where she's commenting on what her life is like and what she did, etc.
It feels like a lot of movies are like that now, though. There's like, my friend calls it the snark hive mind, where like there's like Deadpool type humor, like the quippy stuff, and it's like, it makes sense. She's 16 now, I think, in the movie.
Yeah.
So like a 16-year-old, you know, has different personalities than a 13-year-old, you know, but it just felt a little too cutesy funny at the beginning, you know, and I think part of it might have to do with the fact that they just, you know, they had to do something for a low budget, and it's cheap to write jokes, as opposed to other things, so that might be part of the reason for it. And, they wanted to do that tonal shift, and, to have the ending they want to do, if the whole movie was super serious, it would have just been like real jarring.
At the
I
end
felt it was anyway.
Yeah. At the end of the first one, we're kind of left with Becky, and we wonder, has something snapped for her? And I think that was, she's a little bit more composed in the sequel than maybe we were led to believe she would be. Like we're left to think she might not ever come back from this.
I am glad they didn't feel the need to make her like a villain going forward. I'm sort of glad that she's still like crazy, but on the side of good. So that at least was they could have done that, but just to have a strong female character who also happens to be, because like, let's be honest, if a guy was this character, he would be like Rambo. It'd be like, yeah, he's obviously, to have the 6-year-old girl be the Rambo character, I think is a nice little subversion.
Yeah. But I really like as well that Becky, she has a good heart. And the only times that she becomes really violent is when someone hurts the people or the animal she loves. It's just because she has such a big heart that she becomes violent. And she will also only kill the ones that are really, really bad.
Yeah. She responds to kindness. We see that in the woman that she is staying with. And we only see her pushing back against people who are rude to her, or who, like you said, Vanessa, who cause harm to her or people around her or animals around her. But it does take us in a different direction for sure. And we won't get too deep into the sequel. But I think if people wanted more of the same, you're not going to get exactly the same, but it's an interesting continuation of the story.
Yeah, indeed. To me, it was really similar. It did something different, but it's also very similar.
Yeah.
I am glad that movies, especially this series, is leaning into like white supremacy as the villains, as opposed to like other groups that probably don't need to be bad guys anymore. Because you could always root against Proud Boys, or the noblemen in this movie. Like no one wants to see anything good from them, So I like that we're kind of going back to like the real villains being villains.
Philosophies versus ethnicities.
It might also be important to know that for the Wrath of Becky, it's something you could see if you haven't seen the first one.
Right.
You can really follow the entire storyline. You don't need to see the first one.
Yeah.
So,
they definitely provide enough backstory and pretty economically told.
Yeah. So if friends of you want to watch it, for instance, it's possible without having seen the first one.
But why would you want to do that?
Exactly.
Start at the beginning.
Yeah. I pictured a whole different movie once it started, and it didn't go there. So for me, the MacGuffin in the second one was Elena, the woman that she lives with. I was like, I wanted a movie where we got more of their relationship, because that beginning stuff was really good.
Yeah.
And that they end up defending their homestead together against these noblemen. That's what I wanted to see. But again, I felt like Elena was like, in a short time was a well-realized character whose purpose was to drive Becky to rage again. And I was like, no, don't do that. You have a good character you just created. Don't do that. Or, have them hurt her, but then she comes back in this part of the story again. So I was happy to see Courtney Gaines, the redheaded I remember my first thing with him was in Can't Buy Me Love, when he's the best friend and he's like, you shit on my house, from way back in the 80s with Patrick Dempsey. But he's always fun to see. He's kind of popped up and stayed in movies when he's not necessarily the kind of guy you'd think like, oh, he's going to make a 40-year career, and he has. So it's kind of fun.
Is that a guy with the arrow?
Yes.
Through his mouth. Yeah. He's played. He was in The Burbs, and he was, he kind of often played a hick.
He's
or
a Children of
nerd
the Corn
early on.
I see. Yeah.
He has that look, and he's used it well through his career to build a career. and occasionally he'll pop up in something different, like different kind of role. But yeah, it was always fun to see that come back. And the ending entirely lost me.
Oh, the
Entirely
CIA
lost
business.
me.
Oh yeah, well, it sounds like they're going the action movie route more than anything now.
Yeah. Well, when the bazooka came out, I was like, okay, I'm done. I enjoyed them both. I would never say don't go see them. There was lots of stuff to like about them, and I'm sure for some people it's gonna be like, this is just what I was looking for in both movies. Because no matter what, you have the kills and the gore and the action. Second one, a lot more humor. And for smaller movies, I think they did a lot with what they had. And writing a script in 3 weeks, I do agree. It's you gotta, what ideas you get, you gotta run with and go with, because you have a limited time. I never understand those things. I know I'm not in the industry, but I'm like, why would you not just take more time? And say we'll release this next year, but we'll release a movie that we're happier with because we put in the time we wanted. But I know I'm not in the industry. I don't know the money that drives the time. But
I suppose it's the reason is because they have an option on it for a year, for example, right. And otherwise they will have to pay extra. I think it has to do with this. Yeah.
Right.
The one thing I do want to bring up, there's a website called doesthedogdie.com that will let you know like any stuff that might trigger you. And I don't like seeing dogs get hurt or killed in movies. I'm one of those people. So stuff like that does happen in this one. But because of that, I just thought I would bring up that site, because some people hear about a dog in a horror movie and you're just like, what? I don't want,
Right.
It's so that was the only thing I don't like about the movies. And that's just because of a personal thing. I don't like seeing, like, Lulu could get beat up and I'm like, they kill a dog. I'm like, I can't. No,
you're not alone. There's a lot of people out there who are like, if an
But
animal gets hurt, I don't care what happens to people, but if an animal gets hurt, I'm not watching.
Yeah, I agree that for me, it's also really, really hard to see an animal get killed or hurt. But at the same time, it also makes me realize even more why Becky would go on and kill these people.
Oh, yeah. I would be Becky too.
Someone would do the same with my cat. Okay, it's clear that I will turn into Becky.
Yeah, right. Me too. There's a little bit of Becky in all of us.
Yeah, definitely.
That's a great note to wrap up on. There's a little bit of Becky in all of us.
There's a little bit of Becky in all of us.
Well, thank you all so much. Again, this is Scare-A-Thon 2023. We are benefiting the Women's Reproductive Rights Assistance Project. You can donate via the link that's below in the description. And looking forward to seeing all of you back on the show again very soon. Thanks for chiming in. It's been really great talking with you.
Yeah, it's great to meet everybody.
Until next time, keep searching, keep exploring, and keep sharing the scare.